And you must stand united on this. Stamp out rightful assassin of our youth. You can do it by bringing about compulsory education.
So welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Cannabis Chronicles. Our guest for this episode is Trista Okel, longtime cannabis activist and founder of Empowered Bodycare, which is a collection of cannabis-based topicals and tinctures, which you can also find on the shelves here at Green Retreat. So welcome aboard here, Trista.
Thank you so much for having me, Bruce. I appreciate it.
No worries. We'll kind of just jump right into this and kind of start this off the way we do with everybody. And our first question is always, what's your personal relationship with cannabis and how does it fit into your everyday lifestyle?
That's a great question. So, in 1991, actually, my grandmother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was stage 4, and she was um, fading very fast. So I was 17 years old, and my family went to California, and we were with her for her last 3 days of life because she didn't tell us previous to that that she that well that she was dying. And I was pretty anti at the time. I was very anti-cannabis, believe it or
Oh,
not,
okay.
right? And I didn't really understand it, but I respected and loved my grandmother very much. And grandma had been a hospice nurse herself, and when she was in hospice, and we were with her during that time, I watched her ask my uncle to get her some weed, and right, and he did, and I watched as she smoked a joint. She went from being in so much pain that she was kind of moaning before that,
Mhm.
to being able to laugh and smile and share stories about the family and about her life. And I watched her engage with us in a way that she hadn't been able to do prior to that due to the pain. And it completely changed my it completely changed my outlook on cannabis 100%.
Good.
And and I also I got to see her, get relief in that moment of in her last moments of life. So
Yeah,
it was pretty life-changing for me to see that cannabis could actually be very therapeutic. And
right. Yeah, no doubt. And this was in
yeah,
1991, you said.
it was in 1991. I'm old.
I feel you. I'm getting up there myself.
Right? It happens if we're lucky.
Yeah,
Um,
no doubt.
so after that I went to college and I had I think I went to University of Oregon in Eugene, Oregon. So if anyone is familiar with that area, that they would know that it's a very popular cannabis area. Um, so I developed my own relationship with cannabis at that time, and years later, I actually decided I was going to make my own, right? I didn't think that I would qualify for medical marijuana at that time. So, but I also didn't understand that growing cannabis was a felony. Um, and a friend dropped off 3 little bitty baby clones to my house. Were found by police officers,
Okay.
and they threw the book at me. All together, including the soil on the roots.
Wow.
The 3 plants weighed a little bit over an ounce.
Mhm.
Um, like I think it was 31 grams. And
This was in Oregon? Yeah.
this was in Oregon, but this was in Oregon in 2003.
Right.
So,
A little
right, it's
different.
before we had dispensaries, it's before all that. We did have the medical marijuana law, but it was fairly new. That had only been around since I believe 1998 or 1999. I think California was 96 and I think
96.
Oregon was 98.
I think it was 98.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So, the law hadn't been around that long, and I thought that you had to have cancer or, HIV or AIDS or
Mhm.
MS or something like that in order to get a medical card. I did not know that I qualified for a medical card at that time. Um, so after I was caught, they confiscated the 3 plants and they left, and I assumed they would just throw them away because what we don't know is that they do not tell you when there's a warrant out for your arrest.
This is true. Yes.
Yes. So later, I was arrested, and I spent about 6 hours in jail, and then I was released on my own recognizance. But they did throw the book at me with the cannabis charges. They charged me with possession of over
Mhm.
an ounce because those three plants. No, I didn't have any cannabis. I just had the three baby plants.
And they weren't in
And
flower.
no, 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 no. They were literally stretched clones.
Yeah, just still in veg.
So they started this big, and when they were caught, they were this big.
Fair enough.
Like it wasn't enough to yeah. But they did weigh a little bit over an ounce. So they charged me with possession of over an ounce, which at the time was a felony. They charged me with manufacturing of a controlled and dangerous substance, and they charged me with intent to distribute, which
Interesting.
is yeah,
The
which is
intent to
crazy because
distribute is interesting because where did that come from if you were just growing three little plants?
no idea, no idea. I didn't own a scale. I didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't. I like I said, I wasn't in possession of any actual flour. Um, it just, you know, they just threw the book at me. So, now what I didn't know at the time is that 98% of um, cases are pled out. So they would someone would take a plea bargain and they would take a lesser charge, which is probably why they charged me with all those crazy charges that didn't actually apply.
Mhm.
Um, but I knew that I wasn't a felon, and I knew that I wasn't. I didn't have an intent to distribute. I didn't. None of that was real, right? And I got really lucky. My mom chose to back me up, and she actually got a a second mortgage on her house, and for $30,000, and we hired an attorney. And the following August, I went to trial. Um, and after a 2.5 day trial, I was acquitted by a jury of my peers in 8.5 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Now, when I was acquitted and found not guilty, it made me feel, of course, relieved, very relieved.
Absolutely.
But it also made me angry. Um,
That feeling of
it
being
made me angry
mistreated.
because, say what? Say again?
You were mistreated at that point. So that's
I was.
yeah.
I was, but it also reminded me. So at the time I had long hair,
Mhm.
and I'm going to bring this up because it's important, especially for all of us white people to really understand our privilege. Um, I had long hair, and I had dressed the part for court. Um, it's court and trial is theater. Any attorney will tell you that, and so I passed. And and I realized that if I had the short hair I have now, or if I had a person of color, that I likely would not have been acquitted. Um, Even with all the evidence of, medical necessity, et cetera, that my attorney presented, it still I likely would not have been acquitted. Only 1% of cases that go to trial end in acquittal. So, um, yeah. So that was really it struck me in my heart, and it made me it instantly turned me into an activist.
Yep.
And I started volunteering for a number of different drug policy um, nonprofits. So I started volunteering for Normal. um, I volunteered for Americans for Safe Access, which is a medical marijuana advocacy group. um, Marijuana Policy Project. I lobbied Congress with them in Washington, D.C., um, and Drug Policy Alliance. All of those organizations I started volunteering for, and it was it was a really good time in my life. I feel like I learned a lot, and yeah. So skip ahead a couple of months. I went to Washington, D.C. with Americans for Safe Access and Marijuana Policy Project. We lobbied Congress, and then the next day, ASA, or Americans for Safe Access, decided to or had put up the opportunity for a few of us that wanted to not only participate in a rally outside of Health and Human Services in Virginia, but we also had a banner with thousands of doctors' names who had recommended cannabis to their patients. And our message to Health and Human Services was, if cannabis has no therapeutic value, no medicinal value, then why have so many doctors recommended it to their patients? And so we sat down on the steps of Health and Human Services with this like massive banner with thousands of doctors' names on it, and we were arrested. And it was not on purpose arrest. Marijuana Policy Project had already agreed to pay for our bails, which were $50 a person, and we were charged with incommoding, which is blocking the entrance or exit to a public building or a sidewalk or something like that, right? So I went to jail, and while in that jail cell, I learned that at the time that women in the United States only approved of cannabis legalization at a rate of about 30%. Only about 30% of women that were polled agreed with cannabis legalization. And I realized that it needed to change. There was a lot of fear around it. Women were afraid of losing their kids, or maybe they had a stoner boyfriend in high school who was a jerk, or only played video games, or didn't do much. Like
Yeah.
there was a lot of stigma around it. And I wanted to help raise that, lift that stigma from the plant. And at the same time that this was happening, my mom was diagnosed with three forms of arthritis: psoriatic, rheumatoid, and osteo. And she also fell and broke two vertebrae in her back and had a couple of failed back surgeries. And doctors, it was 2004, and doctors wanted to prescribe her opiates. And I said, absolutely not. And I got to work in my kitchen. Now, again, this is the same time period, like the same couple of months, not the same day, right? So I realized while sitting in the jail cell that if I were to make the topical that I'd made for my mom and share it with more people, that I change their minds.
Right. And this is where
Because
you
the
started thinking
topical,
about becoming an entrepreneur then. Okay.
exactly, yeah. And the topical I'd made with the crock pot in the kitchen for my mom brought her from an 8 to a 3 on the pain scale. And I realized that, and it didn't get her high and it didn't enter her bloodstream, right? So I realized I could change hearts and minds with that. And it was in that jail cell that I came up with the name Empower. And it's an acronym, and it stands for End Marijuana Prohibition, Organize Women, Enact Reform. And
I like it.
yeah,
Nice.
and
I did not actually know
thanks.
that.
And it has two meanings. So it's the acronym, and it's also, people who are in pain need to feel empowered, and let's
Yeah.
empower them. So yeah,
Okay.
so that's and I use cannabis every day.
Yep.
Uh, mostly in the form of my CBD drops.
Okay.
That They're full spectrum CBD drops, which I believe you carry.
People absolutely love that product here on Guernsey. It's by far
Really?
my best selling tincture. It helps a lot of people. Absolutely.
That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
I I do what I do to help people, and that makes me feel really good to help people in Guernsey.
So then you had your experience in 1991 with your grandma. Is that right?
My grandmother, yeah.
And you had your own personal experience with getting arrested and started to get more into activism. And now we're at a point where you're starting now Empower Body Care. What year did that start? Did you start doing Empower?
Yeah, so from the end of 2004 until May of 2013, I did research and development. So I did different iterations of my role on oil,
Hmm.
which I think you'll scary. Um, I did different iterations of that, and I finally came up with a really good formulation, and got the guts to start my own business,
Yeah.
right? Because you know, it's not for the faint of heart. And in 2013, I launched the company.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I remember because prior to what you have now, I remember it was black packaging because I carried your products in my dispensary there. But you had a black
Right.
packaging, correct? Yeah, of
Correct. Yes. So I had it's been an evolution of sorts. So
course.
in 2013, I launched into the Oregon medical marijuana um, market, right, which was at the time fairly unregulated dispensaries, essentially.
Yeah, just a big gray area. Yeah, the good old
Yeah, and
days.
they really regulate them. They put some regulations in place in 2014, but really nothing was fully regulated until recreational passed,
Yeah.
and they allowed us to start selling products in 2016. But when I originally launched, it was Empower Body Care. It was a black packaging, and it was a THCA CBD 1 and that was my medical marijuana product that I launched, right? Um, skip ahead 1 year, and I had so many people from out of state writing to me, writing to the company, asking for if I could ship them the black label products, which were cannabis, and obviously I couldn't do that. That I decided to launch the white label, right? The black label and the white label. So same exact formulation, just no THCA, only CBD.
CBD. Yeah.
Yeah, and this was back when CBD was the 13 or not 13, $32,000, no, $36,000 a kilo was the first time I
Yes.
started buying
Yes. I
CBD. It was so expensive back then.
I remember when, yeah, when CBD first started hitting the market, it was so expensive, and now it's,
It
yeah, it's
was.
by far the cheapest cannabinoid that you can purchase right now. It's crazy.
It is. It is, which has allowed me to make things like a 9,000 milligram tincture,
Yeah,
full spectrum, right? I
for a
can I
good
can do
price.
that because the price is yeah, for a price that people can afford,
Yeah.
because it's also something that was really important to me to create a product that was good, tasted better than the rest, and was approached price wise, you know?
Mhm.
Um, a lot of the margins that other companies are making on their drops or tinctures are is ridiculous, and just completely overpriced. So I looked into importing to France and realized that they won't take um, any CBD products from the United States. They will only take them from the EU.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. You can't really get them in through the U.S. or from the U.S., which is interesting. And then I found the only cannabinoid maker in the EU that I could find was, oh gosh, it's in Eastern Europe. I can't remember which country it was,
Yeah,
but not not the internet website that I'm looking for. When I create products, I need to know where it's coming from,
absolutely. Yeah,
how it's grown, and
yeah,
I need to know the lab that's testing it, and trust the test results, and it has to be an accredited lab. And
exactly.
yeah, and I've been working with the lab I work with for many years now, and so I trust them.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So yeah, in 2014, that's when I launched the CBD only side,
Okay.
and then the brand kind of morphed to, the rose gold that you're seeing now, for the CBD side of the company. But I also have a line in Arizona, actually, in their regulated
Yeah.
cannabis dispensary system as well,
Okay.
and that is a THC CBD 1 to 3 ratio.
Okay. Okay. And that's in tincture form, or is that the
No, 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 that's just the topicals.
topicals? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't get that one over here yet. So,
No, no, nothing like that.
yeah,
Those are only available in the regulated system.
we'll get there one day over here, hopefully soon. But
One day.
one day for sure. Moving on a little bit, Dan. So many people still aren't fully aware of how cannabis topicals and tinctures really work. So, what are the
Mhm.
some of the specific challenges that come with educating people about topicals and tinctures as opposed to more traditional cannabis products like smoke and flower, because everybody knows how to do that, right? So,
Right. Yeah, well, there is a lot of education involved in topicals, especially.
mhm,
Um, I get this on both the CBD side and the cannabis side. Sorry. Anyway, I get that often, and well, let's put it this way. Um, we've recently launched into the Arizona cannabis dispensary system, right?
mhm,
Um, and what we found is I launched into two different chains. And in one chain, I'm allowed to do bud tender training. And I may only get to train five or six of their employees, but five or six of their employees get to learn directly from me
yeah,
all about the products. They've reordered twice in each store where I'm not allowed to train to do bud tender trainings. They have not reordered and their product is moving slowly. So education is key. And in part of that education, I create for them a bud tender training guide. You probably can't see it because of my background, but I created a bud tender training guide and I go through it with them and I teach them all about how topicals actually work. And it's when people see the science behind it, it really makes it easier for them to sell and to learn, right? And so here's some of the things a lot of people don't know. So topicals work by interacting with receptors in the skin that are connected to the central nervous system and send signals to the brain, right? Um, some some of those receptors are called, there's one called TRPV1. This receptor helps, or these receptors help to regulate the skin's life cycle and promote homeostasis in the body. Um, they're also TRPV1 is also responsible for inflammation,
mhm,
and when you apply CBD to the TRPV1 receptor, it reduces inflammation and it sends a message to the brain to act as an anti-nociceptive, which means that it reduces the body's response to painful stimuli. Does that make sense?
it does. Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of the ways, one of the receptors um, that helps CBD do its job when you apply it to the skin.
Mhm,
Now, another one is the PPAR gamma receptor, and it's also responsible for regulating inflammation locally, right, wherever in the skin or in the body, because these receptors are also inside the body. So when you take um, CBD internally, it's the same thing. It just works differently, right? It just hits the receptors in a different place. But in the skin, when you apply it, it reduces the inflammation directly where it's applied as well. There's also a pro-inflammatory enzyme in the skin called TNF alpha. And
mhm,
when you apply CBD, it actually reduces inflammation there as well. Um, and then THCA, for instance, that will also interact with different receptors like TRPM8, um, TRPA1, uh, and then also potentially COX-1 and 2, COX-1 and 2.
mhm.
There's some preclinical studies on that as well. But part of, being a leader in the topical field of cannabis is to follow the research. And
Right.
it's constantly changing and constantly evolving, and we're learning more and more. Recently, I saw and not just topicals, right, in general. I,
Mhm,
I recently saw a study that where they took 150 milligrams of CBD and gave dosage to folks with mild to moderate anxiety, and it worked very well. And I
I
find
take
that
107 myself every day. So just for anxiety.
100,
107.
107. Yeah, so in my drops, in the 9,000 milligram drops, 1 milliliter of it is 150 milligrams.
150, yeah.
We're hitting that sweet spot, and actually, that's what I take every day.
Okay. Would you
Is
call it fair, um, on the way that I go about selling topicals and tinctures in general when it comes to pain? Is the way that I
Yeah,
explain it to my customers is that I would recommend a topical for more localized pain and a tincture for more generalized pain. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I've mixed I've had mixed results and mixed feelings and mixed
Okay.
feedback on on overall body pain and taking CBD internally. So uh with tinctures or drops, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Personally, when taking CBD internally, I see it can change mood. So it can help with for me personally, it can help with anxiety
Yep, yep.
um, or stress, right? It can help with sleep,
Hmm.
right? Help get you to that place where it's easier to go to sleep, relaxing. Um, I haven't seen a lot in terms of it alleviating physical pain per se,
Hmm.
but I mean every body is different, and
I
you
do get a
know,
lot of people who purchase your tincture specifically for just arthritis and stuff like that and generalized pain. I do get some
and
people
it's
who
working.
definitely get it for anxiety as well. But yeah, I do get
Okay.
a lot of people who do use it because there used to be an item that was sold here on Guernsey. It was a strain called Guernsey Gold, and it was being sold basically in a syringe, like an RSO.
Okay.
Um, and that was only 18 milligrams of THC per mil.
Okay.
And people were loving it. People were liking it. They were using it. And now they can't get it anymore. But all those people who were using it have now switched over to your tincture, um,
Okay.
which is actually getting them a much better value and much higher cannabinoid content as well. So yeah, the people who were using that product are now finding relief through your tincture, um, for
Okay.
for for pain relief.
Interesting. All right. So that is great information to have. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm so glad that it's able to help. I do think it depends on the person. Like I said, everybody is different,
Hmm.
and
Absolutely.
I think it depends on maybe also the type of pain that they're dealing with. I think that also has an effect or it plays a role.
Yep.
Um, I wish there was more studies on it. Honestly, I do look forward to seeing more on it, and I hope that more studies are done soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here. I guess moving on. So we know cannabis is a very much so male-dominated industry at this point in time. Um, what unique challenges have you faced as a woman in the industry and as a member of the LGBTQ plus community? What are those challenges, and can are they easy to overcome? And are we seeing more diversity happening in the industry, at least there in the US? Or
That is a great question. Or actually group of questions. All right, I'm going to start with the men, the gender thing first. Okay. Um, so having been in business since 2013, in May I'll have been in business 12 years. Uh, I've seen in that time period, I've seen it's been difficult for women. So a lot of women start businesses and have to close them. Um, People like me, we were doing great. Then the pandemic hit, and at the same time, the pandemic hit, a huge company with a lot of marketing money
mhm,
came into the Oregon market and pretty much wiped out my market share. Um, but at the same time, the pandemic shut down the stores that I was in that I just gotten into,
okay,
right? And so I couldn't do demos and I could compete because I couldn't promote my brand. Uh, and so we lost a huge percentage of our revenue from 2019 to present day, to the point where I used to have 19 employees and now it's just me. Now, one of the reasons why is because from 2017 to 2020, I looked for uh investment, and I had the sheet, right? I had they call it the hockey stick. Um, in other words, the growth of my company was up and to the right, right? Like that's what you want that to look like. Um, there was no reason to not invest in my company,
Right.
right? It was,
Yeah.
the products were they're good, they're high quality, we do all third party lab testing. Like I operate with an incredible amount of integrity, and I'm trying to see my own word on that. It's just I can't operate in any other way
Hmm.
from soul. Um, and I couldn't get investment. And I was finally I spoke with a big time female investor from New York City who looked at me and said, "Trista, people invest in people who look like themselves. Only 3% of investment goes to women businesses, and many of them have Ivy League MBAs, right? The ones that actually get investment. For the LGBTQ plus community, drop that number down to 0.3%. And that includes white passing gay men. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah,
So there's some work to be done.
there's a lot of work to be done. And I continue to work. I continue to try try and change that stigma.
Yeah.
Uh, that said, though, I was in Tucson doing some different trainings, maybe 3 weeks ago. It was
Okay.
right after the election here in the United States, where we were really excited about how the election could run. Um, and we were all pretty devastated by the way that it did go.
Hmm.
Uh, which I know people might not know that we're shocked. We were shocked that it turned out the way that it did. And I worked hard. I volunteered for campaigns for it to go the other way.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of LGBTQ plus buzzwords what I've learned, at least here in Arizona. And um,
That's
the
all.
bottom line was it felt really good for them to see representation from a business owner, in a dispensary. And I think it's important for us to keep showing up and to keep showing other people that we're just like them. We're I just happen to have a wife and I have short hair. That's just um, but I think representation is super important, and I think that we can change the stigma
Yeah.
associated with both females in the industry and LGBTQ plus people in the industry just by showing up and being true to themselves.
That makes sense.
Diversity makes the world go around. It makes it much more beautiful,
Exactly. And that's the thing that America forgets, that it was built on diversity.
right?
You know,
Well, well,
I mean, so many different cultures and stuff like that. Fair.
right,
I know where you're going with that,
right.
and that's fair.
I mean, other than the fact that we stole this land, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I thought Christopher Columbus discovered it. Oh man.
True to the best.
Um, as an activist, kind of obviously turned business owner, um, do you find yourself frustrated at all by limitations or regulations in the industry? And for those ones that you do find, how do you navigate those? And I guess some of those my guess would be marketing cannabis products as a smaller values driven company. I'm assuming there's probably some hoops and things you got to get through for that. I know for me personally, being a small business, marketing is my toughest thing because of all
Oh,
of the restrictions on social media. You know.
oh yeah. Oh, marketing is so tough. Yes, a lot of the restrictions on social media. Well, right. So right now I'm process of making a brochure for the cannabis side.
Hmm.
So I differentiate my businesses. It's all empowered, right? But I got empowered body care, which is the CBD side
Hmm.
or the hemp side, right? For Google, it's hemp for
The hemp side. Yeah.
right, right. But in fact, all cannabis. It's just whether or not, so in the United States, the definition between or the definition of marijuana
Mhm.
is the cannabis plant that has 0.3% or more THC in it.
Yeah.
The definition for hemp is a cannabis plant that has less than 0.3% THC in it,
See, and
right?
me personally, I have a huge issue with that because that all came part of that farm bill, right? So, and this is what I always try to explain to people is that that's not really hemp. That is a CBD marijuana plant that people are
It
growing.
is.
Hemp is a
Well,
stock. It
no,
has
no,
less than
no.
like 1% there. What's that?
So marijuana is actually the only reason we're going to use the term marijuana is because that is the United States legal word that they use, right? But
Sure.
in fact, because the word marijuana comes from racist roots,
That's fair as well. Yep.
and liberties, uh, I try not to use that. I try to use the word cannabis for it because it's all cannabis, right?
It is. Yeah. You just have
Sorry, I
those separations that what bugs me is what is the fact that your hemp is obviously it's your stock, right? It grows straight up. It's a stock. There's barely any CBD in there. It's used for fiber and food and textiles and stuff like that. But by
yep,
making the law the way they did with the 0.3%, now people are growing these giant CBD cannabis plants that have tons of CBD in them, 15, 18%. Then that's all
yep.
being extracted down, getting shoved into all these products, and then it's the market's becoming oversaturated. And then these companies that are left with all the CBD extract don't know what to do with it. Hey, let's turn it into synthetic cannabinoids, HHC, H4 CBD, and all this stuff, and then let's sell it at gas stations. That to me is not the cannabis industry. That
Nope.
is ruining the cannabis industry, in my opinion. These synthetic cannabinoids are ridiculous. And because of that law, we're not seeing all these textiles and hempcrete and hemp fuel and all these hemp products like we should when having legal hemp market, right? Um,
Right.
yeah, it completely ruined it the way they implemented it, in my opinion.
This way. So with the 2018 Farm Bill, right? Prior to the 2018 Farm Bill, I operated on the 2014 Farm Bill.
Hmm.
It literally meant I had to add, like if I sent out an order, I had to add a letter per USPS regulations, state that I was the owner of the company and that this product had been tested and it had this amount of CBD in it and all the things, right? Um, but with the 2018 farm bill, just opened up the market so much, there was a flood of people who were afraid of the regulations of the cannabis market,
Hmm.
the regulated marijuana market, um, and they were also at the same time a bunch of like thousands of get rich quick people,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
That put out scammy, crappy products, and honestly, like soured a lot of people on the idea of CBD being something that was actually helpful. Products that didn't have any CBD in it at all, or had substances that shouldn't have been in there in their products. So honestly, what I think ruined it was greed.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yep. I mean,
Um,
I think that's currently a thorn in the side of the entire industry right now is greed because everybody's jumping in trying to become a millionaire, and it's like it's not what the space is about, you know. And that's where I firmly believe that you have companies that are in the cannabis industry And then you have other companies that are in the cannabis industry and part of the cannabis community. Um, and these corporations and these that are they're just part of the industry. They don't even use the product. They can care less about the community. They just want to make money at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah, I see that. I see that. It's so back in the day when it was when when you and I were both in Oregon and we were working together back in the day, right? Um, like your dispensary carried my products and we were all medical, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We we had this we all did what we did like with heart and to help people and after I'm gonna just get back in time for a second here. So in 2004, after my trial, I decided I was gonna learn how to grow for real.
Right.
Um, and because I'd won at trial and because I'd done all the advocacy work and activism, uh, Ed Rosenthal became a part of my circle,
Mhm.
right? Do you know who Ed Rosenthal is? Rosenthal?
Oh yeah, Ed.
So
I've met Ed a couple times at the grow competitions and stuff. I remember the grow
yeah,
classic
so
that he was a part of. I won the grow classic at the first year they did it actually. And
nice.
yeah, that's the first time I met Ed was at the grow classic.
Yeah. So Ed, so he became a part of my circle, right? And back in the early 2000s, 2005, I think, he came over to my house for dinner and
Nice.
we had dinner and then we went out to my garage where I had my grow room, right? And he told me all the things I needed to do to make it better. And I
And that
did.
would be the
And
guy to listen to, 100%.
right? I mean, he's the guru. He was known as the guru of ganja. And like when I was growing up, when I was 18 years old, like first High Times magazine, and in the High Times magazine, there was always a column, and the column was Ask Ed, and it would be like closet growers who wanted advice on their grows, and he would give it to them. And he wrote many, many books and on how best to grow cannabis and what the plant needs and how to how to get it what it needs. And he was just he's a good friend and resource. And yeah, I have a few years, uh, but he really helped me, and I learned how to really grow. And during that time, as a medical grower, from like 2004 to 2014,
Mhm.
um, I gave away hundreds of pounds of cannabis to people who needed it, right? Because that's what you do when you're trying to help people. And I get to like watch people with all sorts of different conditions like get relief. And
Real quick, just for our viewers, when she said pounds, she's not referring to the currency.
oh yeah, no, I'm sorry.
No, you're
Uh
fine. Just the weight. Yeah, we're referring to the weight.
yes, yeah. So I guess I could say kilos, but I never did a kilo at a time.
There you go.
I gave away this time I was giving away like 28.3 grams at the time.
There you go. Yeah.
But I got to help a lot of people is what I was trying to say. Uh
Yeah. Yeah.
and I wasn't giving away money because I didn't have it. But I did have what I did was heart, and I did have good solid cannabis that could help people get relief. And it for the patients that I was taking care of, I had cancer patients, I had arthritis patients,
Mhm.
and, some people wanted capsules. They wanted to give me capsules for them. Others wanted drops or that kind of thing. Others wanted the topical products, and others just wanted flour. I just, I gave people what they needed, and I got to help a lot of people. And that that sense of community, that sense of responsibility to each other, where maybe one patient was on assistance from the state, and they couldn't afford to grow their own, and they weren't well enough to. Uh, somebody else would come in and say, I'll pay the electricity bill this month.
Yeah.
Just, it was just a network of people that were helping each other, and helping to make our community healthier and a better place. And that was really the spirit of cannabis movement, or
Yeah.
the medical marijuana, or marijuana movement that I started in, that's now become the cannabis industry. And the cannabis industry is it's not kind, and it doesn't care about people,
Mhm.
and it doesn't hold the same values and ethos that the old school
Old
people
school.
like me
Yeah.
and have. And but every once in a while I get someone from, like, in the industry that is like that, and it's so heartwarming. It makes me feel so good, and like I'm not alone in the industry,
Yeah, yeah,
um
exactly. That's why it's like too, I get frustrated here with the way the medical is implemented. Like it's not, they did it completely different than how we did it. Like here obviously we'd still go to our doctor, the cannabis doctor, and they would say, qualify for cannabis. They give you the card and you can go in dispensary and get what you want. Here, they
yeah.
actually try to run it like it's a pharmaceutical drug where you get a prescription every month. You walk into a pharmacy, they give you your cannabis, and then you're on your way. The problem here is that the doctors tend to prescribe people based on indica and sativa. Here's your indica for night, here's your sativa for during the day. And I obviously find a huge issue with that because indica and sativa do not correlate to effects. As we know, it all goes based on terpene profiles. So I have in the shop downstairs how many patients I get coming in. Oh, I was prescribed this indica for nighttime, but it's keeping me up, and or I was prescribed a sativa for during the day, and I'm falling asleep. And so it's terpenes are not being looked at. People are being misprescribed. Um, it all comes in these containers, and you're forced to have to get 10 grams at a time. So, which is creating a massive black market here, right? Because if you have somebody who's on like 60 grams, you walk into the pharmacy and you go to pick up your 60, but you're like, oh, I only have enough for 20 grams. And you're like, hey, can I pay you for 20, take 20 and come back for the rest next week? And the pharmacy will tell you, no, you have to take all 60. So, and it's not cheap either. We're talking, five to 600 pounds a month for somebody. And that person now has to decide, do I get my medical marijuana or cannabis, or do I pay my rent and get food for the month? So what do? They're going to get their cannabis because they know they can go to the black market, sell half of it, make all their money back, and still have half of the month and pay their bills. Because the black market here is 40 pounds a gram. It's insane. Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's awful.
So with Guernsey, it's a small little island of 65,000 people. So the issue here is always been getting it here, right? So even when there's a black market prior to medical, the issue's always been how do we get it into the island? Because it's so tight here with only 65,000 people, customs catches everything. So
Right, of course it would. Yeah.
exactly. So if you're getting it into the island, then that price is going up. And a lot of it was coming in, wasn't even flour. Apparently it was hash, which they call like squidgy black. I've heard people tell me they were getting it with like pieces of plastic in it and all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, we used to get weed back in the day with little pebbles in it and stuff to weigh it down. And, this is the same stuff going on over here. But yeah, I mean, when I first came over in February of 2019, I'm sorry, 2020, February 2020, I came over and immediately we all went into lockdown. And from what I'm told during that time that I was in lockdown, it was priced all the way up to like 80 pounds a gram. And that's not cool. Like for people to charge that kind of money, in my opinion. But that's the way the market is here right now. And it does not cater to the patient. It caters to well, at least a couple of the clinics that are profiteering off of it. You have some clinics that aren't profiteering that are trying to do this as a nonprofit. But
So say in Guernsey you've got a medical marijuana patient, right?
mhm,
They go to the pharmacy to pick it up to buy their.
Yep.
How much is the pharmacy charging them?
See, and that's who's making most of the money is the pharmacy and the so it goes. So this is what's interesting, right? The grower's growing it, then it goes from the grower. So and then it has to be shipped to a GMP facility to be packaged and weighed out by a completely another company, and then it has to be shipped now to the pharmacy here. But it can only be prescribed to you by the doctor from the clinic, and there's so many middlemen in this making money that the
Okay.
patients, it's outrageous. And
But it's
then
not coming, so it's not coming from the medical cannabis that these patients are using is not coming from Guernsey.
no, it's not. That's what originally we came over to do was to grow CBD and then eventually work into medical cannabis and then into a recreational. Um, Guernsey, unfortunately, has completely missed the mark with this industry here. They're implementing regulations, they're not consulting with industry professionals, and they're making mistakes. Like just now, over the last week or so, they decided to implement a law that says, or a request, I guess, at a clinic saying you can't import any flower that's 30% or higher in THC. And to say that, in my opinion, it shows you don't really understand. Because if that plant's 30% or higher in THC, you should be testing the legitimacy of that first off, right? Because
Yeah,
we know
because
all them tricks in the industry to get that THC higher, you know.
also 30% isn't, in my opinion, 30% is not possible.
I agree with that. I agree with that. The best that I have seen legitimately has been Bruce Banner, 26 to 28. That was the first one I think that we've ever really seen hit those kind of numbers legitimately. But then all of a sudden people are, oh, I got 35, 36%. Well, you don't really. You cut your top bud, you probably sprinkle some keef on it, or you microwave and it got the water content out to bring the THC up. Like those are not legitimate test results. And then you have the third party testing, which we know happened in Oregon. People slip somebody an extra 100 quid and boom, I have a 30% test result. It's not. And then for the states to say you can't have anything that's above 30%, while simultaneously people are being prescribed vape cartridges.
Well, I mean, so in Oregon, I served on rules advisory committees for the Oregon Cannabis Commission.
Yep, yep,
Um,
same.
I was able to, as a result, I was able to help. One, I was able to help them able to identify some of the things that you're talking about. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, the bad actors, right? Um, the people who were not legitimately doing things for the right reason or following the rules the way that they should have been. I was able to do that in what to look for. Uh, I was also able to advise policy policy based on scientific studies,
Mm-hmm.
as well as regulations that are sound and also people are able to follow, right?
Exactly.
Because you don't want to set up a system. A government should not want to set up a system that makes it impossible for the people to operate within that system, right? And if
Exactly.
you overlay, it's going to do the same thing. Um, and regarding psychosis, that issue really has to do with, uh, from what I've seen, um, younger people whose brains have not fully developed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Using massive amounts of highly concentrated cannabis.
Yep.
And we're not talking flower, we're talking
Sucking dabs and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, extracts, right?
But we're also seeing studies that show that you're already predisposed to something, right?
100%. Yep.
This is happening when you're developing in the womb. You're predisposed to these things. If cannabis in young people, and from my perspective, the reason that you see it is because it's still illegal, right? Because we know, as if you're a 16-year-old kid, you're going to get your hands on cannabis before you are alcohol, because you need to know somebody 21 years of age or older to go in the store and buy it for you and take that risk. When you can just run to the black market and get cannabis. And
Yeah,
now, yes,
when I was even when I was a kid, it was a lot easier to get cannabis for people for
absolutely.
kids. It was a lot easier for kids to get cannabis when I was young than than it was to get alcohol for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's one of their things here is, oh, we can't legalize. We have to think about the youth. It's like, then think about the youth and legalize, because that's what's going to help stop it from getting in their hands. But they just
Right.
they don't see that.
Also, if you I'm going to call it legalization because it's not. If it were legal, it would be a much freer industry, right? It is a taxed and regulated industry. So, if you do have, the regulations in place to protect the consumer, right? So you've got the testing, and you've got and it's a standardized testing, right? Labs shouldn't be able to have proprietary methods for testing,
Mhm.
right? And we saw it a lot early on in Oregon.
Yeah.
Proprietary testing methods, right? They need to be standardized,
Yep.
um, so that people know what they're getting. And so they also know that everything is tested for all the contaminants that we don't want to see in those products.
Exactly.
And I think that when you approach it like that, when you approach legalization as regulation, and you put the proper regulations in place that don't make it difficult for the operators to be good actors,
Hmm.
um, and to be able to support themselves. Like, for instance, in the United States, we've got the 280E tax code, right? Which it for your listeners that don't understand what that is, it means that cannabis businesses can't write off usual customary business expenses. So we can't write off printer paper. We can't write off a salesperson's salary, and that leads, I think, a lot of companies to do things in ways that aren't right. Like, for instance, the big multi-state operators here in the United States, they don't pay their federal income taxes.
Hmm.
So they owe hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in taxes, and just continue to operate that way because, well, 280E doesn't tax code 280E doesn't allow them to uh, in it as a regular business. Um, so what I would say and hope that if folks, from the regulatory perspective of your government, do have to get a chance to watch this or listen to this podcast, um, I would hope that they would understand that if they want to tax and regulate and protect the consumer, um, in a safe way with cannabis, then they're going to need to actually call on those of us with experience
Exactly.
in the industry. Our industry has been taxed and regulated for a decade, almost a decade now,
Hmm.
and we do have the experience, and we can advise to protect the health and safety of consumers,
Yep. I
and while
mean,
still making it a business that grows, and an industry that actually benefits the community versus is a detriment to the community.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
I personally have been going back to Rules Advisory Committee. I have now emailed all the state's members now twice, last year, and this past year. And I mean, I broke it down the entire system to them of how to set it up, why it's needed, why you need to include industry professionals. Um, and they come back to me saying, "Oh, well, we have the BGCA, which is the Bailiwick of Guernsey Cannabis Agency, which is made
Yeah.
up of the chief pharmacist and a couple other members, but none of which actually have cannabis experience, which is why we see this cap for 30%. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Right.
I mean,
And
I've
again,
given them all the tools
regulators
to
30%
do this.
real.
What's that?
I said, and again, regulators 30% isn't real.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. I don't know if I told you how the edible market here works, but our CBD law says that you can have up to 3% THC to the total CBD content by the weight of the product.
Oh,
And then there's also
sure.
another little caveat to that law, something like if the CBD is less than 2.5% of the total weight of the product and the THC can be something like 0.1%. It's really weird, that one. But the 3% one, like I have edibles that are like 930 milligrams and 23 milligrams of THC, or 930 milligrams of CBD and 23 milligrams of THC. With that, but the fact that you're allowing that type of market, you're already halfway there. You're allowing
Right.
basically a recreational edible market at the end of the day, so to speak. So, I mean, at that
Yeah.
point, just allow us to sell the flower. I mean, we're already halfway there. So yeah, moving on. So for listeners who might be interested in getting involved in cannabis activism or starting their own brand, what advice would you offer them?
Okay. Starting your own brand. Um, you know, it's a lot of hard work. Uh, but if you're passionate about it, stay true to your values. Um, don't take on debt.
Yeah,
Don't take on investors.
I
Just,
agree with that.
yep, just build it yourself and bootstrap it. So if you can't afford it, don't do it.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
and also stay true to your values. Like, do not let difficulties change how you approach what you're doing.
Mhm.
Uh, that's one thing I've been able to do the entire time I've been in business is to maintain my integrity and maintain the integrity of my brand. So if you're going to do it, just keep on doing it and do it for the right reasons. Don't
Exactly.
do it for money. Like it's great if the money comes, that's awesome. Um, but what's most important is to do it to help people and to basically free plant as much as possible because it is such a beneficial plant for so many people for so many ailments.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, that's how I run my business. My brand is, yeah, sticking to it and sticking to my values and just not bringing on synthetic cannabinoids and stuff like that because HHCs and all those things that are in the market now that everybody's selling. It's like I won't do it. Can I make money off of it? 100%. Would I feel okay about it? No. And I want to feel okay about what I'm giving to people. So yeah, I do agree with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Just it's helping people. And to your question about marketing, I
yeah.
was going to tell you that I'm working on a brochure for the cannabis side, right?
Mhm.
Like I have these for the CBD side,
Yep,
and
I
I'm
have those.
trying to right. I know you have some,
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to make the cannabis one,
Mhm.
and I can't make any medical claims, right? Because of the FDA and the FTC that don't allow that, right? Um, However, the whole reason people use CBD topicals or cannabis topicals is to get relief from pain and inflammation.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So I have to take a brochure and tell people what the products do without telling people what the products do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That is one of the difficulties is making claims in the
Yeah.
industry. That's why
Do
it's
they
always
have the same regulations for Guernsey with with CBD stuff?
Yeah, yeah, you can't make claims or anything like that. Obviously, once they're in my shop, that's a completely different story. It's conversation. Um, but yeah, you can't. Yeah, there's no making claims on products or anything like that. So, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. Um,
Yeah, I get it. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen.
there is.
So
I
I
think the
get why the
key.
regulations are there, but it does make it hard because literally this is why people use products.
Yeah, yeah. What I did find is the key thing is the word may. That is the key to the marketing with it. May reduce pain, may help with anxiety. That we can do because we're saying that it may do those things, but we're not 100% sure, right? So
Right.
that's one way to be able to do it is that just that one word.
Yeah, I think we've gone on so many so many journeys in our talk today, Bruce.
No doubt. I got one more question for you. So, what's one book, podcast, or activist that you would recommend to others in the cannabis industry to check out?
Oh, I should have known this question in advance. Um,
You can say Cannabis Chronicles. It's
I will say Cannabis Chronicles.
okay.
Um, I really like to see what Amanda Reiman, Reiman is doing.
Hmm.
Um, I like the Knox doctors. They're really good. Knox.
Okay.
Check them out. Check them out. Knox docs. Um, and there's a lot of folks from a few years back that really did some great work that it might be interesting to learn about like what they've done. Um, Chris Conrad, Mickey Norris, they're amazing activists. Um, there's Nurse Heather Sobel, RN. She's brilliant. Yeah, there's a lot of different folks that have done a lot of great work. If you want to learn about growing, Ed Rosenthal is
Yep.
definitely an expert in the
Yep.
field.
And when you were talking
Uh,
about the Ask Ed, I actually have the book here in the lounge, the Ask Ed book for
right?
people to check out. So
Yep. That's that's a great source. Yeah, those would be my those would probably be my first choices right now.
awesome. Well, good. Good.
And also you can use Google search to and set up like keyword
Yep.
searches so that you can actually get the new science on whatever cannabinoid or subject you're interested in.
Hmm.
Email box, it works great. That's also really helpful. Yeah.
Okay. Good deal. Good deal. I like it. Well, hopefully, some people check those guys out. I think it'd be worth it. I'm going to be checking a few of them out myself that I haven't heard of either.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. So that I think this has been pretty good. Um,
So too.
yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure our viewers are going to enjoy this one.
I sure hope so.
So yeah, thank you for joining us, Trista. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me, Chris. And also, I just wanted to also say that if your customers ever have any questions about any of the products, I am more than happy to answer them. Just have to it- find us on social media.
Yep,
We'd also love a follow um, on Instagram. It's at Empower Bodycare and at Empower Canacare.
yep.
Um, and just reach out. I'm the one answering the questions, and if I don't know the answer, I will find it. I will find out the answer for you.
That's great. That's awesome. I'll make sure to put that in the links when we put this on YouTube and everything, so that people can find your links in Instagram and Facebook and everything.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it. And to all the viewers, are coming up on our next
Yeah.
episode. We will be interviewing Clark French from the United Patients Alliance in the UK. He is one of the founders. So that should be quite interesting. He is also an activist as well. So looking forward to that conversation in the next episode. Until then, I appreciate your time, and yeah, we'll chat again, Trista. Thank you.
Thanks so much for
Cheers.